experience in this matter.
Many thanks, Chair, Minister, Excellencies, Ambassadors. It is true, we have a room of professionals, politicians, practitioners who understand well the power of cultural dialogue, and we've been reminded also about the importance of cultural heritage and retaining our cultural heritage, including our belief, which is very important. And I didn't want to repeat the many good points that have been made. We were reminded by our colleague Minister from Bahrain about that not all dialogue is good dialogue. And that's really, in the last couple of years of my career, after 15 years of diplomacy in the Arab world and in Asia, it's very clear to me that constructive dialogue is one that is based on a platform of commitment to peaceful relations and a commitment to future peaceful relations. And as my friend from Macedonia has reminded us, we live in a very turbulent and changing world. And I wanted to add one dimension to our conversation tonight. It seems to me that the dramatic changes and transformations in world systems that we're experiencing has created a very great set of challenges for the dialogue that we all seek. The little seems to have changed in many ways because the changes in systems on a global scale have led to evidence of more acute manifestations of intolerance everywhere. Even the G8, who met today and yesterday in Ireland, could agree on many of the issues of trade, but none of the real issues about humanity and about peaceful relations were resolved. They were discussed but not resolved. And this reflects, I think, in my experience of the challenges of dialogue and of good dialogue. Since the times of transformation I've referred to, there's been more questioning about the likely global order of the future in which dialogue might take place. And it's this dimension I wanted to add, particularly following the very erudite comments by our Minister earlier. For some time, and particularly since the discussion that I can raise with you from my platform now in the university in the West, of the decline of the West, has started a move from a bipolar world to a multipolar world. And this will create significant changes for dialogue, some of which were referred to by my friend from the OIC and from GCC. I was very fortunate to have sat with Professor Sinoglio in Rio and discussed the issue of Islamophobia, which was a multipolar issue, not a bipolar issue, and reflects some of the real challenges facing new dialogues and new systems following transformations. So what is now referred to as the Western world order, together with the West's capacity to define modernity, I think creates a generation of commentators who are unsure whether there's a difference between modernization and westernization. I was discussing the current situation in Turkey just before we came in, and it's very, very opportune moment for us to reflect on that. Is modernization the same as westernization? Because we always thought it used to be, and I suggest that it isn't. I think it's one of the challenges for dialogue that we must accept. So there are big issues in the context of intercultural dialogue, particularly the foresight that we may now be about to experience a world with competing narratives rather than a convergence to a single narrative. And so the powerful dialogue has got to be one that enables difference to prevail, cultural heritage to be protected, not a dialogue that pursues agreement at all times. Acceptance is not agreement. We have to have a world of dialogue with openness, with the ability to share our traditions and not to be threatened by the other. Now we know this because, as I started, we're a room full of people committed and passionate about the importance of dialogue and cultural heritage. The work that I'm now privileged to do, as retiring from diplomacy and entering university, is to try and frame this in a way that creates very practical pointers, guidelines for good dialogue versus bad dialogue, without the constraints that diplomacy sometimes brings. But I wanted to pick up in my final comment the product of that. Pick up a comment from the Minister earlier about the positive and direct actions that we can take. And it won't be, I think, from the peer group that we've assembled tonight. It will be, as the Minister reminded us, be from the millennium generation, the new generation of young people. Many of us, some of us were in Baku recently for a very successful conference on dialogue, a forum that the government of Azerbaijan is committed to continue. This is a country, Azerbaijan, where 55% of the population are under the age of 24. They don't have a memory of the dark days of the bipolar Cold War. They have the prospect of a future of dialogue and openness, of moderation, of acceptance, without agreement, that can be popularized by bringing them together. So the sorts of proposed actions the Minister asked for in terms of bringing young people together, many of us have observed the power of young people, whether it's linking our school children, whether it's creating global teams of citizens at the global level rather than at the national level. We should encourage. So let's think positively, in spite of my good friend from UNESCO's reminder of the turbulence that we face. Let's think positive. There are things we can do to generate the conditions for constructive dialogue. They will be committed to peaceful relations, but not necessarily relations only framed in the context of one tradition, which we used to call the Western tradition. Thank you very much.